taught us anything, is that everything can always get significantly worse if you just, wait a minute. Anyway, a great deal of these bills are wrapped in the disguise of protecting religious rights, specifically the right to discriminate against other people, effectively declaring religious rights to have priority over LGBTQ rights. In several states, we're seeing bills allowing people to deny adoption to same-sex couples. Kentucky is trying to allow government officials to refuse to acknowledge gay marriage based on their beliefs, despite being, government officials. And a handful of states are dabbling with the idea that healthcare professionals should have the right to refuse treating people based on their personal beliefs, which is just so incredibly vague and weird that it could be used to discriminate against literally anyone. And in Tennessee, they passed a law effectively forcing businesses to have a trigger warning on their doors if they happen to have co-ed toilets. For I guess any snowflake who doesn't understand the concept of family bathrooms. Tennessee also tried and failed to pass a bill that would, quote, prohibit officials from creating, enforcing, or endorsing policies that respect or promote non-secular, self-asserted, sex-based identity narratives. And I have no fucking clue what that is supposed to mean. It's like the cloud atlas of laws. Most of these bills are so ridiculously vague and weird that they appear to ban everything and nothing, which we will certainly talk about in a bit. Not only that, but almost half of the bills put forward this year specifically target transgender people, with a large chunk of those prioritizing, or at least claiming to prioritize, the health and well-being of trans children. So today, we're gonna talk about all of these bills, what they're trying to do, about how and why they're being proposed at such a high velocity all of a sudden. Also, we might reference Cloud Atlas at least once more, maybe Jupiter ascending. We'll see how we feel. And let's start, if we have to, with the currently blocked Texas bill, which is technically the least bummer story in that it hasn't happened yet. So that's good? Sure. Okay, so the Texas order that Governor Abbott is still fighting to enact would call on both licensed professionals and members of the general public to report parents of transgender children as child abusers if those children had received gender-affirming care. Not only that, but the order came as part of a letter from Abbott to the Department of Family and Protective Services, in which he asked the department to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation into the families of any minors undergoing elective procedures for transition. Now, we've already done a whole episode on the way anti-trans advocates use the "what about the children" narrative to obfuscate their puritanical conservative attitudes towards gender and sexuality, and we would probably make a whole other video about other ways that transphobic ideology is wrong and bad. In fact, make more videos. Alright, but it bears worth repeating here. Puberty blockers are broadly reversible and cause no meaningful harm. What's more, gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers as well as hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgery, is shown to noticeably improve quality of life and decrease depression and suicidal ideation in trans adolescents. And, most importantly, being transgender isn't a problem we need to prevent or fix, and parents trying to affirm their children's identity aren't being abusive, Greg, you fucking Gumby. According to the failing New York Times, Abbott's order managed to sow chaos and confusion amongst trans families and their medical providers before it was temporarily halted. Dr. Megan Mooney, a licensed psychologist whose clients include transgender children, as well as a plaintiff in the case to halt the order, testified to there being outright panic as the order caused children and their families to fear for their safety and forced medical professionals to choose between their legal duties and moral obligations. One mother, an employee of Texas's Family Protection Agency, who showed up to court in goddamn disguise, testified to being terrified for her trans daughter's health and well-being. And Rio Grande Valley resident Adamalis Vigil told the Texas Tribune that her 13-year-old trans daughter, Adeline, is so terrified she will be forcibly separated from her mother that she doesn't even want to sleep in her own bed. Because in Texas, being found guilty of child abuse can come with a first-degree felony conviction and up to 100 years in prison and or a fine of $10,000, which seems pretty problematic when you start defining child abuse as stuff I don't like. Seems bad. Yeah, it says so right here, it's bad. Not to mention, of course, that it also means having your child taken away from you by the state and presumably prevented from continuing the often life-saving processes of hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgeries. And so when this potential law causes a wave of panic and fear from the people it claims to protect, you kind of have to wonder if it's perhaps not at all actually a law designed to protect those people. Maybe it's a a bad law aimed at pleasing a base of voters who simply don't like transgender people, all at the expense of kids and parents who just want to live their lives.
Well, you would notice I have 3 thriving children. The issues we're facing right now are not things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. My daughter she loves riding her bike. She loves swimming. She loves hanging out with her friends, playing Pokemon Go, all the things that you would expect from a 12-year-old who's happy. And, you'll have to forgive me because it's pretty hard for me to talk about this without tearing up because it's just been such an awful couple of weeks.
Can you imagine being a parent suddenly told by the state that you might have your happy and healthy kids taken away from you because a group of politicians decided that your existence is wrong and bad? It's honestly Sisypheanly hard to express just how intentionally cruel and dishonest this ongoing conservative attempt to f*** over trans kids and their families is. But of course, here at Cody's Shody, we love nothing more than pushing huge rocks up various hills and inclines, as well as talking about the hit film Jupiter Ascending, out now in 2015. On top of everything we've already mentioned, Abbott's order was prompted by a non-binding legal opinion from Attorney General Ken Paxton, released only a few days earlier, in which Paxton argued that gender-affirming care constitutes child abuse. The opinion is, unsurprisingly, full of shit. Not only does Paxton claim that care widely accepted by leading healthcare groups like puberty blockers are abusive, but he also cites as examples things like body modification surgery, a process which is rarely, if ever, performed on children. Paxton's opinion statement has been criticized alongside Abbott's directive by various medical and human rights organizations, including the Endocrine Society, an international medical organization for the field of endocrinology, which said the conservative argument rejects evidence-based transgender medical care. But of course, this isn't about evidence, nor is it about actually getting these laws through. By doing this, they are sending a signal to both their base, but especially to parents of trans kids, that by allowing your child to pursue their own personal happiness, the government is going to make their lives as hard as possible. Because the GOP loves interfering with the lives of families, right? It's like their motto says, tread on me harder, big government. P.S. We hate families. Seems long, but, that's the grand old party we know and tolerate. See, while Paxton's statement was non-binding and Abbott's order is currently blocked, that doesn't mean their words don't have weight and impact when they come from important elected officials. And like we said before, Abbott's order was only blocked on the grounds that it was an overreach of the executive branch, not on the grounds that it was evil and dishonest, because apparently morality is subjective and a functioning democratic system can't base its legislative process on how good or evil a law is because that's just not how it works. Or something. I don't know. I refuse to read a book. Or can't read, except for the teleprompter, which reads, "The point is, while it kicks absolute ass that Judge Meacham told Abbott to shut the f*** up, you awful piece of shit, all it would take to actually pass legislation that does the same thing as Abbott's order would be for enough Texas legislators to believe the same hateful lies that Abbott and Paxton believe. And unfortunately, the only way to stop that from happening is to use that same legislative system to pass bills that explicitly protect trans people and permanently enshrine their rights into law. So, phew, good thing the legislative processes in this country are simple and fast acting. Right? Right. Okay. Moving on from the good news. That was the good news. Jesus frogs. All right. Well, here's some worse news. On March 28th, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, yuck, 0 stars, signed into law Bill HB 1557, Parental Rights in Education Act, or as virtually everyone has decided to call it, the Don't Say Gay Bill. In its preamble, HB 1557 claims that one of its goals is to prohibit classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels or in a specified manner. The precise wording in the law later states, again, exact quote, "Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards." The bill goes on to give parents the ability to sue a school district if they believe this law has been violated, stating, if a concern is not resolved by the school district, a parent may bring an action against the school school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that the school district procedure or practice violates this paragraph